China, or even Russia, or any totalitarian country. Maybe I could understand some of these illegal injunctions. Maybe I could understand the denial of certain basic First Amendment privileges because they haven't committed themselves to that over there. But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right. And so just as I say we aren't going to let any dogs or water hoses turn us around, we aren't going to let any injunction turn us around. Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
Hello, all, and welcome. This is Read Between the Lines with my co-star here, Coach Charles James. I'd like to thank you for showing in here tonight, Coach James of San Diego High School. And then we have Officer of the San Diego PD, Jay Gresham. Thank you, Officer Gresham, for joining us tonight. In the midst of these times of what we're going through right now, I know a lot of people feel a lot of the ways. And, we're just proud and glad that you've taken the time out to come and speak with us. So thank you. And we welcome you, sir.
Thank you. I'm actually currently assigned with the Unified School District as a detective,
Okay.
but I served my time with San Diego, so I've been in both agencies. So thank you for having me here tonight.
Okay.
Got you. Also,
Well, we're going to get this. Go ahead, Coach.
Officer Jay has been a police within our community. He's also been a police for over 24 years, but working with the school district and working with our kids inner city, he's very heavy involved. We could see him around at football games and grocery stores and all that. So I think it's important to have somebody that they could actually talk to here. So I again appreciate you as well for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Let's get this. We're going to get this thing started off right. I got a question I wanted to start off with. Amidst stuff that's now, you have cities burning up and people just in their feelings, feeling a certain type of way about what happened with Mr. George Floyd. So, Officer Gresham, why did you become an officer of the law just off top?
Well, I served my time in the military, served a couple tours. When I got out, I wanted to do something that kind of had that same kind of brotherhood. And you know what? The police department, law enforcement was something that I could do and I could give back to my community, and wherever the community I was. So, here I am, something that I never had dreamed of initially, but 24 years later, nearly, here I am.
Okay. I was looking at a lot of your posts um, this week, and I reached out to you. One of the things that I see and I'm hearing from a lot of the community and as well as myself that see these things are we had a black man die multiple times and black women. Um, we've all had negative experiences with police, white and black. Um, we've had positive experiences with police, white and black. And I think that um, what I'm hearing from a lot of people, and as well as my own thinking as well, is it's not that many police that is on the positive side that are stepping out. I'm seeing more of it now, and I think that's what um, I watched in I think it was Detroit. One of the cops said, "Hey, I'm gonna walk with you guys." He took his hat off and he was embraced. Um, and I believe that that's what people need to see more. Um, what is your take on why you're speaking out so much on the issues that's at hand right now?
Well, some of the things I see, I am, I'm kind of torn because I'm a police officer, I'm in law enforcement, but yet and still, prior to that, that's just what I do. I'm a black man first, and growing up in a black community, and even as an adult, the things that you experience as a black man, I relate to them. When I'm not in uniform or whatever, or not driving a car, when I'm out and about in my own personal car, you know, I'm approached. I've been stopped by the police, and, for various things, various reasons. And of course, my first thing is, very cordial. And I'm like, hey, why did you stop me? That's the question that I ask. I give them all my identification, up front, and I'll challenge that, because it's like, if it's legit, yes, if I did something, I'll do it. However, they'll come back, and I've had the experience where they come back and say, hey, well, why didn't you tell me you're an officer? Well, it shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter whether I'm an
Mm,
officer or not. It should matter if you stop me legitly, then I'll deal with that. But when you have had that experience and they can't justify it, that kind of tells you where it is. What happens in our community. Other people are experiencing that. I can identify with that because I'm human. I'm a black man. I have those same experiences. I have a black son. I have two grandsons that have to come and grow up in this world, and what's going to happen to them. I shouldn't have to say, to my son, or tell them to dress a certain way. I shouldn't tell them to, make sure you keep your hands where it is, be very respectful, because they always have those values. But it's certain things we have to do above and beyond for our own kids, and it shouldn't be that way. It should not be that way.
yeah,
So
I told.
sometimes you just
Yeah.
got to do what's right. Because they always have.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. I mean, I could see where you're coming from, especially saying, you're a black man first before being a police officer. A lot of people have asked me, even within the past couple of weeks, oh, well, Reed, are you going to say something? Well, past couple of days, Reed, are you going to say something? And I was like, well, first off, I'm a black man, so uh, regardless of what business that I do, I have to speak of it how I can speak of it. My next question, Officer Jay. I'm gonna call you Jay. You know what I'm saying? Because you're a man. You know what I mean? Um,
Appreciate that.
when the situations happen, what is the convo in the precincts? Is there a united front, or is it segregation there as well? And that question is from a member, Jonathan Scott, who called in and asked about that.
Okay, so the question is, I want to make sure I answer it and understand it completely. The conversation
Okay.
meaning, how do officers respond to that in
Yes.
inside
Like,
the station?
yes.
However, in situations, um, I can't answer for all because I'm actually answering for myself and my own personal experiences.
Yeah.
Being around me, and when we had previous incidents and we discuss them, um, you don't hear any negative talk. Where most officers are legit. When they come at you and they talk to you, right is right, wrong is wrong. So those
Mhm.
officers that do maybe have a difference of opinion, um, they may not speak up and they may not show it for sure because you're there. You're there to show that. And I this is how I can describe it because people think that we have this. There's a secret circle. If And this is an example that's really clear. If you prefer to smoke marijuana or drink or whatever, you're going to do it with a certain group. When you are with another group that don't drink, you're not going to do it. So you'll never know what the group does on the other side. So, birds together flock together. All my friends and all my coworkers and those who come around me know who I am and they know what I stand for. I have a certain demeanor around me in my circle. And when they associate with me, I have a certain demeanor. I can't account for other people's actions outside that. But when it's around me and the conversation I hear, um, it's positive. It's more the right and wrong and wrong. And if I do hear something, I address it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Uh, Um, we'll get into some of the questions that we have for some of the people that wanted to chime in. We have some of those written down. Um, I wanted to chime in a little bit on um, the issue at hand and some of the things that you were posting on. I wanted some of the people that they haven't heard what your views are on it, and I think you've been um, saying a powerful message that needs to be heard. That you're saying the same thing that we're saying. It's wrong that black men are being killed by cops. And what are some of the views that you've been uh, touching on during this week?
One thing I do believe in, I do believe it's going to be time for a change.
Mhm.
With talk and with the political talking, there needs to be a valid, viable answer with actions. And one thing that I've been preaching and I've been actually just discussing and been, sharing my point of view is that situation um, could have been and should have been totally avoided. That was not a situation to where training was actually an issue because that is something that you're not trained and you don't do that. The issue at hand is you have an individual who donned a police uniform that day, that moment, took the opportunity to show his dominance in his own way. He put his knee on, Mr. Floyd's neck as his knee, as if he's sitting there, pinning an animal that you're waiting to die. 8 minutes and 46 seconds. I read the after action report or whatever it was, the case report or whatever that they actually reported in the news. That wasn't a man that was sitting there struggling. You wasn't a man that was sitting there saying that your life was in fear, that you made a split second decision because you were fearful or something occurred. You had the opportunity to sit there. You're sitting there callously with your hand in your pocket, looking around, as if you're sitting there saying, "Watch me, look at me." That's my opinion because I see. I had to separate it because I try to be logical by thinking I was an officer because there's
Yeah.
always two sides to every story. But there is an opportunity for me, first and foremost, to be a black man where I see and I look and I say, that's wrong. He just killed this man because he felt he had something to prove. And when you had other officers there saying there's another action that need to be taken, or you have an officer who's sitting there looking at him saying there's should be saying, hey, he's not fighting anymore. He asked for medical help. It's four of us. There's no need for you to put your neck, put your leg on a man's throat. And he's handcuffed. He's not fighting. I don't care what he did previously. Once you go to a medical aid, you treat him as such. You treat him as a human being. We
I,
watched
I
that
think
man's
that
life
right.
drain, and that wasn't right.
Yeah, and I think that goes right into my next question, and my next question being, do you think the police force needs more thorough training?
Again, police
Do you think?
departments
Yeah,
can
go
always
ahead.
use more training. However, training had nothing to do with that. That was him being who he was prior to putting on that uniform. Had nothing to do with his job. He had the power and the
I
dominance
agree.
that he did while he was on duty. But that person was who he was prior to putting that uniform on. It just got magnified because he had a little bit of, a little bit more confidence.
I heard
Agreed.
on your post today that you said the chokehold has been thrown out of the department in San Diego. I don't know if it's every police force, but you said it's been thrown out because of those reasons. Um, is that a national thing or is that only in San Diego?
I can't speak for everybody's training. I know when I came on 20 up years ago, you were taught the carotid restraint. And the
Mhm.
carotid restraint was, where you actually, if you have people that are violent, whether they're on drugs or they're drinking, in order to help apprehend them, you render them unconscious, and it usually takes 15 to 20 seconds. When they wake up, 30 seconds later, they're in handcuffs. So it kind of gives you the advantage because of medical reasons, because of just the way things going, because it's easy to slip to your windpipe. There's a lot of things that reason why that's no longer in effect. So if I can render a man unconscious within a matter of seconds with my forearm, what would you think will happen to a man that puts 200 plus pounds of his knee and his body weight on that in that same position that renders him unconscious? It's
Exactly.
dying. You could die, and that is exactly what occurred.
Coach James.
Um, let's get into some questions. Um, these came from a couple people that just wanted to know certain things that's been on their mind. People are
He
Coach
froze.
James. Okay. What we're gonna
you
do is,
got
guys. Coach James, you back?
yeah, you there?
Okay. Go ahead. Go ahead. You kind of froze up there for a second. Go ahead and finish your
All right,
Yeah,
so
question.
he
I just
froze
want
up.
to get into some questions that some of the people wanted to know. Um, you guys ready? Am I
Yep.
good?
Yes.
Okay. All right. One of the questions were, um, why don't you think more officers speak out against police when they commit these murders within the black community?
That's something that I haven't had the experience to where when something occurred like that no one speaks out because people speak out when something's wrong. Um, we can't control people and their own personal actions, intentions, or emotions. You can only train and do what you do. Every officer that I personally know, and I've had the being around, their morals and values stick to where we're here to do the right thing. So, as a general thing to say, hey, why don't people speak up against him? They speak up against him. However, my example that I used before, where if you're in a social group and you doing your own thing, a lot of people are not going to be around you if you're doing the wrong thing. They're going to be around their own like-minded people. And of course, when you're around people like-minded, as you're doing things, they know that if, especially in the event they know it's wrong, they're not going to be around you and they're not going to do it because they know there are going to be consequences. However, when they're in their own circle and they're doing their own thing, you can't control that. And you don't know what they're doing right or wrong. And that's a tough situation. However, being on the job, has it occurred? I would probably say absolutely. Does it occur? It hasn't occurred around me. And that's the best way I can answer that.
Okay.
All righty. We appreciate that, Officer Jay. I'm used to talking to coaches, man. Excuse me. I'm used to talking to coaches all the time, man. We're getting ready to take a small break right here. We're getting ready to go to commercial break right now. And we will be right back. And we're going to ask more questions from some people who have some inquisitive questions for Officer Jay Gresham. And thank you, Officer Jay, for stepping in with us, man. We'll be right back, man. Read between the lines.
The only reason we're here is to make sure that you got a voice. That's it. There we go. Don't think for a second that he represents who these cops are from all over the county and around this nation. We go out there to help people, not do that nonsense. There we go. I just want to tell you, where's my man? Right there. Where's the gentleman?
Oh, I think he took off.
Okay, yeah, my man.
He took off.
Pastor Hawkins, I was going to tell you, we want to be with y'all for real. So I took my helmet off and laid the batons down. I want to make this a parade, not a protest. You got little ones here, you got dogs, so what's up? So listen, I'm just telling you, these cops love you. That cop over there hugs people, so you tell us what you need to do.
Walk with us! 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 Walk with us!
Let's walk. Let's walk.
Sheriff Chris Watson, sorry. Go!
Tonight, a 7 Eyewitness News exclusive. Former Buffalo police officer Cariel Horn in a battle tonight to get her pension. She was fired for trying to stop a fellow officer she says was abusing a suspect. And tonight she is telling her side of the story to 7 Eyewitness News reporter Kendra Eaglin.
November 1st, 2006, there was a call of an officer in trouble at 707 Walden.
That officer, Gregory Kwiatkowski, who was responding to a domestic dispute inside of that home between Neil Mack and his girlfriend. When Officer Cariel Horn went into the house, she says Mack had already been placed under arrest.
He was handcuffed in the front, and he was sideways and being punched in the face by Gregory Kwiatkowski.
Horn and about 10 other officers who arrived at the scene helped drag Mack out of the home, but once outside, Horn says Officer Kwiatkowski was out of control.
Gregory Kwiatkowski turned Neil Mack around and started choking him. So then I'm like, Greg, you're choking him, because I thought whatever happened in the house he was still upset about. So when he didn't stop choking him, then I just grabbed his arm from around Neil Mack's neck.
If that chokehold of a handcuffed suspect caught Horn off guard, it didn't prepare her for what she says Kwiatkowski did next.
He comes up and punches me in the face, and so I had to have my bridge replaced.
Horn says other officers pulled her back when she tried to defend herself. Following that incident, Horn was fired, charged with obstruction for jumping on Officer Kwiatkowski's back and or striking him with her hands. But Officer Kwiatkowski's own words seemed to contradict conflict with the charges. In sworn testimony, he says she never got on top of me. Nonetheless, Horn lost every appeal, her 19-year career over, and she didn't qualify for a pension. The breadwinner for her 5 children, Horn, now a truck driver to make ends meet.
My daughter said, "Mommy, why'd you go to work that day?" She never said, "Why did you do what you did?" or "I wish you wouldn't have done it." She just said, "I wish you wouldn't have gone to work that day." So I don't regret it.
Officer Kwiatkowski retired from the police force after he was suspended for choking another officer on the job, a separate incident of punching another officer when he was off the clock, and most recently, Kwiatkowski and 2 other officers were indicted on civil rights charges for holding down a black teenager and shooting him with a BB gun. As for Horn, the city has sent her case to the state retirement system for review. We contacted them for an update, but we haven't heard back yet.
All righty, and we are back, man. Back here with Officer Jay Gresham, and he's in the building. Excuse me, guys. He's in the building right now, man, and he has been giving us some very good insight about what's going on. Me and Coach James right now are going to hit through some questions that we've been asked by people who are viewers of our show and people who just have things to say and they would like to ask an officer a question. I'm going to go in here next, Coach James, right now, and I'm going to ask. We have from Kendra. Should there be stricter qualifications on to get into the academy, Officer J?
To get into the academy, it is already a strenuous process to get in there. They pretty much turn every stone and everything possible. So the process to start, I think that it's a good system. Everything could always be tweaked. However, once you get in your career, there is no follow up unless you're involved in an incident. And I think that we should look at things like that. We have guys come back from Iraq after a 6-month tour, yet and still, they can be diagnosed with PTSD. But when you take an officer who shows up, leaves his family in the morning, goes to work or whatever his shift is, he may see traumatic things throughout the day, back to back to back to back. So he could see, a death or something happen to a child or anything, a bad accident. And then he has 10 minutes to 15 minutes between a call. The next call he shows up, he has to have a smile on his face as if that's the start of his day. We need to have more checks and balance when it comes to the mental issues, the mental stability of officers, to give them an out, to help them in the event that, it's a checkup. You go to the doctor once a year. On this job, you get beat up on this job. You do it, day in and day out. You see stuff that most citizens couldn't even bear seeing, or who they wouldn't even want to see.
Whew.
So I think in that situation, we need to have a follow-up situation, not necessarily once you get in, but once you're in there, and after a while, have a periodical check. How that would work, I don't know. But at some point, we have to check because people tend to get skewed, or if they don't deal with certain things that occur.
Great
Okay.
answer. Thank you.
Um, I have a question from Coach Harper. We've had a lot in our community dealing with our kids, and just recently we had one of our players, not mine necessarily, but one of our community kids that played sports around. We seen him grow up, and he was harassed and thrown down, and we all seen this on the news the other day. A lot of the kids in the community are friends with him, and they've lost their trust, not only for just police, but police in their community as well. And so, Coach Harper wanted to know, how can we move forward and bridge the gap within the African American community and the police force? How could we bridge that gap moving forward right now?
bridging that gap, that's it's a hard thing because you lost the trust, and everybody know once you lose trust, it's hard to regain. First of all, one of the things first and foremost, we should have more people service in our community with faces that look like us because we can understand us, and then from that point, that's a start. Not to say that somebody from the outside won't do a good job, but when it comes to dealing to building trust and to bridging this gap again, you got to figure it out somehow. Because what you're doing ain't working or it continues to fail. That's the definition of insanity. So you need to change it, but we need to service, our communities with more faces that look like ours. Because when you're from the neighborhood, they know you, you know them. You feel a little bit more comfortable hoping, or it's a better chance that it's going to be a better interaction. And that was one thing why I went to work in the community and dealing with the kids, because you know what? We put too many in the system that don't need to be there. Our kids are misunderstood. Sometimes I'm not going to say we don't have bad apples because we do. However, everybody should be given an opportunity and a chance. I actually had, working at Morris High School, had a kid whom, had multiple run ins with. And one day I was like, that's it, the talking's over. When I arrested him, he came back to me a couple years later when he graduated, had his own kid, had a nice job. He said the best thing in the life was not only you giving me opportunities, but I took advantage. But the day you arrested me, you actually showed me what it was about because there was consequences. But you can discipline and give consequences and show love and show respect because they understand they need it. When you do it in such a malice way and they don't feel they feel a disconnect, you tend to get a different result. That was one thing why I prided myself when I worked down in the communities directly with the kids for so many years. Build that trust, and you trust with the
Yeah.
community. And they know you, they know me, in or out of uniform.
Right.
I see kids now, and I'm like, you guys are grown now with your own kids. But because I had built a trust with them and a bond, a reputation, that they knew I was a good guy. They knew I was one of the good guys. And it's sad to say it like that, but I built that bond and that trust with them, and I prided myself on building that relationship.
Good, good, good. All right. I appreciate that. I mean, my next question for myself is, do you believe that even though after the incidents that have happened across the country right now, do you believe that the relationship between police and citizens can be repaired?
Personally, I do. I think it can be repaired. I think it will be. However, we have to stop being politically correct. We have to be just, honest, respectful, and put actions behind it that's going to be viable.
All right.
We don't
And
need community service. We just need
it's
to
a
do
two
it.
part. It's almost a two-part question with that one. Do you believe, from what I've seen, I think that does there need to be some kind of a law where officers should not be able to shoot or choke or beat unarmed citizens?
That's a question that I can't and I don't want to get into different aspects of that because every situation calls for different things that need to occur.
Mhm.
And, I'm not going to Monday morning quarterback any situation that has occurred. However, I only know how I handle things when I was in certain situations. And you know what? That's something that I would just really not want to get into that. And I just ask to be respectful of that particular question. And it's not avoiding anything, but that is so what if questions that I don't want to create or cause anything that is unnecessary.
No problem. No problem. I totally understand that. Coach James, we're going to go into one more commercial. I think you have two more questions or three more questions to ask. I only have one more. We're going to go into
Okay.
another commercial. We're going to go back and we're going to let you finish that up with Officer Jay Gresham. Thank you for coming in again to read between the lines. We'll be right back.
They're not athletes. They can't dribble a ball, can't throw a ball, run track or whatever. And we have a lot of kids that just miss out and they don't get into the schools. I mean, they get into the schools that they want to get into, but they don't have any funding. And so when me being a school presence, I see those kids all the time and they're like, hey, coach, can you help me? I don't play football or anything like that, but can you still help me? And that's why I actually started this foundation. You can find more on our website. That's charlesjameseducationfoundation.org. You can log into there and donate to us directly. We have all donations are taxed. You can have them as write-offs. We have the tax ID number for you guys, as well as we have some great supporters as well that's helping out with us that we would love you to be a part of it.
All righty, guys, we are back. Once again, read between the lines. I'm here with my guest star. We have Coach Charles James of San Diego High, and then we have Officer Jay Gresham. Coach James, I figured you had a couple more questions to go ahead and ask, so
Yeah,
go ahead and shoot. I'll wait for my last
definitely.
one.
I got you. So this question is from Mr. Okenwa, and I think is a good question. He wanted to know why is the George Floyd case, I'm sorry, different than the other cases that we lost black men and women. What is so different about this one where everybody's jumping on and police are saying, okay, this is wrong? What's so different about this one that is making a big impact?
From my opinion, is this is just as speaking from Jay, because I sit back and I see exactly what everybody else sees. The saying that a life was taken from a black man in our country at the hands of a law enforcement incident. This is one of the first. This is one of the incidents, and it's not the only one that I saw was just despicable, because you had a man here and we all watched it slowly. That 7 minute video, 8 minute video, where the man was pleading for help and we watched his life drain away. This is the proverbial straw that broke the camel back that's going to need action. That's where we're going to be at right now. That is something that occurred, and that is something that needs to be addressed. And it had nothing to do with his training from law enforcement. This had things to do with his own personal being as a man and how he treated another man, an individual.
Definitely. Another question we have from Coach Baxter, and I think this is a good one. We deal with a lot of this in our community, a lot of people that's not informed, and especially kids that are driving now. They're getting up there in age, and also we have men and women in our communities. He wanted to know: is there an informational package that talk about certain rights that we have when we get pulled over or stopped by law enforcement, that we can have, because a lot of people don't know their rights. Is there anything that's out there where we can have in our cars, like a insurance packet that says, "Hey, these are your rights within you getting pulled over"?
Well, there are a few websites out there. The ACLU have different law attorney firms have them online. What your rights are, what you should do's and don'ts. Um, a lot of times, the police departments actually will put that information out there as well. In they'll have the information for them as well in their community service centers. So
Okay.
there are things that you have to do. Um, a lot of things that occur is because people have their myths out there and they get told the wrong information, and it makes things go in a total different way.
Okay. Definitely, definitely. We have uh, another question that is from one of your former students. She's doing a lot of great things in the community right now, and she wanted to know, how's it talking to
Go ahead and say that again,
law
Coach
enforcement.
James.
You
You
hear me?
froze up.
Yeah, say it again.
Am I there?
Yeah.
Conversations with your counterpart, with your white counterpartners about the issues that's going on today. What are they saying, or do they even want to have the conversation with you?
I totally missed the first half of your question. It
Oh, okay,
was it was frozen.
got you. Am I there?
Yeah, you're there.
You're
Go
you're
ahead.
back.
Okay, sorry. So, one of your former students, she wanted to know, is it difficult having a conversation with your white counterpartners about the issues that we have today? Are they willing to talk and understand what we're saying, uh, our opinions, your opinions? Are they willing to understand, or are they not wanting to hear it?
Well, I haven't per se talked to a whole lot of officers when it comes to things. This
Hmm.
particular situation, it's so fresh and everybody's figuring things out. However, when we have conversations, you just have to respect the other person's opinions.
Right.
And if a person wants to have the open dialogue, you have it, and it's open. Those who don't want to have dialogue, they don't approach it, and you don't approach them. So it's just kind of a respect thing.
Got you. Got you.
Okay.
Reed, you
All
got a
right.
question?
Yeah, I got a couple more. How many do you have left, Coach?
I got one more left.
Okay, I got one. I got two more here. All right. Do you think the media is portraying law enforcement the wrong way? Is unfairly portraying the law enforcement? That's Miss Ray. Do you think the media is misportraying law enforcement?
I think at times you don't get the full story. You get snippets, you get the shocking portion because an incident involving um, an officer and a suspect, it is shocking and it's explosive a lot of times. So you get a snippet of it. You never hear the follow up with a lot of these cases, because then you'll see the entire videos. You'll actually get the entire story. You'll get the outcome to where, hey, the officer was disciplined, the officer was fired, the officer was, you know, charged. They don't give you the full results. And most people just take what that first snippet is and make it as such, and it's all of a sudden it's word, it's Bible. And
Hmm.
the media is going to be the media. They got to get their ratings. This is what they do. They sensationalize everything. And I don't say that to downplay anything because there are plenty of officers that have been prosecuted. There's plenty of officers have been sentenced. There's plenty of officers have been fired or disciplined, and or it's there, but you never hear the follow up because it's no longer newsworthy for the media outlets.
Mm,
That's the unfair
okay.
part about that.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. And then my last one, and then Coach James, you can finish it up with your last question. Do you think there is a problem within the law enforcement sector?
I think law enforcement is stepping up, and with these incidents that have occurred, they've done their due diligence thus far to continue to try to make the system better. However, I say man-made, man-broken, but the only problem with any system is the human aspect. You can't control what a person's actions is. You can put as many strict guidelines as you can, but when a person does something they're not supposed to, you cannot stop that. We can't control that. That is the sad part. That is the human aspect of being an officer, and that's something that we're all held accountable. Trust me. You have nearly 1 million officers in this country, law enforcement officers, and you're labeled by 5 to 10 officers a year that go out and do something like this or something that puts us in a bad light. Trust me, the rest of us work very hard for this not to occur. So we can only do our best, but you can't control the human aspect. That's what I mean by we need to go back, and if there's other issues that's going on, we take it a little step further. And like I said, let's talk about the mental preparedness for officers, the mental checkup for officers to ensure that you get a tune up on your car before you put it on the road. We need to do the same for our officers and make sure that we give them every tool that we can possibly to help with the human aspect that we can't control.
Okay.
All right. I appreciate
The
you, man.
last,
Thank you for answering my questions. Coach James, it's on you.
yeah, the last question I have is from CC. He wanted to know, is the Law Enforcement Bill of Right real? And if so, what is the statute of law within those rights prevents cops from the integrity of stopping other cops when wrong in the moment?
Well, you have the Peace Officer Bill of Rights, which is a government code, and you can look it up. It's real. For the second part, integrity is what you use to make sure that you're doing the right things. And if an officer sees something that's not current or not right, he or she should report it. He or she should try to stop it. In the event that they don't, and you find out they had knowledge, they'll be held accountable as well. That's how serious it is. It's not something that everybody does to avoid it. It's nothing to protect. The Officers Peace Bill of Rights is basically for them. Peace Officer Bill of Rights is for them to have due process in the event that an incident occurs. It's not a protection for you lying or you doing anything or protecting any officers. It's just going to give you the opportunity to have, your due process for any incident that you're involved in.
Gotcha.
So that's something that I wanted to make sure I tell you.
Yeah.
I want to go back real quick. You was asking me about when kids get stopped or people get stopped in their community. The best thing I can tell everybody is, and you see all these myths and all these stories where everybody's like, I don't have to show you my license. I don't have to do this. Well, you actually have to show them your information. When you're stopped, and you can look at any of these organizations, the ACOU, they're large on this, or any defense attorneys. If you're stopped for a violation, you have to present you're the driver. Prevent your driver's license, your registration, and your car insurance, and they have to tell you why they're stopping you for any enforcement actions. They can't stop you for no reason, but they have to stop you with something that has to do with the violation of either of the penal code or the vehicle code. So you have to present your information. So this myth where people say, I don't have to show you, look it up. It's actually based in DMV, 12951B of the vehicle code. Make sure they read that. You have to present that. You actually, when you sign for your driver's license, you're admitting that you're going to follow all those 60,000 laws in the vehicle code. You're held accountable for that. So
All righty.
don't get into a pissing match with the officers. Don't make it a situation bigger than what it should, because there's always a process. Even if you get a ticket, it's just saying you're going to go to court, that you're not guilty. You're not admitting guilt, but there's always something behind it. You can always complain. You can always do that. Don't make the situation on the side of the road worse than it could be. That's the best thing that I can tell us. That's what I told my kids, whom I love dearly. So, and I'll share that with everyone.
Listen, Officer excuse me, Officer J, I appreciate you coming on Read Between the Lines today. Thank you, Coach Charles James, San Diego High, for always being supportive. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Officer J. Gresham. If you see him, talk to him, say hello, be polite, and ask him some questions, and I'm pretty sure he's an officer of the law, but he'll give it to you straight. Like he said, not going to be beating around the bush or anything else like that, but going to be straight with you about what needs to happen. During these times, we're going through some difficult times. I would like to ask all the athletes that know me and that know Coach James to stay inside the house. I know you guys may be angry right now and may want to vent and do things outside of your nature, but please stay inside the house, and keep a cool head, and let the people who are in charge figure this out. Coach James, do you have anything else to say?
Yeah, just to reiterate on what you're saying right there. Stay in the house. Um, Keep safe. I want all my boys to stay safe, man. And it's a lot out there. It's a lot of people out there right now that are doing the wrong thing, not protesting in peace. They just out there trying to be reckless with it. And those are the people we trying to stay away from, and have this protest about what's really at hand right now. So stay safe. Um, Officer J, I appreciate you coming on. This helps out a lot of people I know that was tuning in and really wanted to know some of those answers. And you are one of the law enforcement that are stepping up and speaking your piece. So we appreciate it. Yeah, everybody stay safe.
All right, man. This has been another episode, man. This is Read Between the Lines. You know what I mean? Shout out to Lawrence Webb, who gave me that great idea to call the show that, Read Between the Lines. And we're going to continue to do stuff like this and ask people hard-hitting questions within their sector and see if we can get a better understanding between people and the people that are handling their business. Because sometimes there's just a misunderstanding, and it's just about getting a clear understanding, you guys. Thank you. And also thank you, AG Sport Video Production, our producer into this show, with all the commercials and all the in-betweens. We appreciate you, AG. And guys, we will see you soon on the next Read Between the Lines.
Is be true to what you said on paper. If I lived in China or even Russia or any totalitarian country, maybe I could understand some of these illegal injunctions. Maybe I could understand the denial of certain basic First Amendment privileges because they haven't committed themselves to that over there. But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right. And so just as I say we aren't going to let any dogs or water hoses, that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight.